Marriage is often sold as the ultimate partnership, a place where two people share their lives, their dreams and their responsibilities. But for many men, the reality of marriage is far from the fairy tale. They've been promised from the moment they say "I do." They're thrust into a role that demands more than they can often give. Financial provider, emotional anchor, and protector. What most men don't realize is that this seemingly equal partnership can turn into a situation where their needs are sidelined, their emotions are suppressed, and the weight of the relationship falls squarely on their shoulders. Today, we're revealing the hidden truths about how marriage exploits men, and why so many men find themselves paying the price. The illusion of equality. From the moment we're born, society begins to mold us into specific roles. Roles that we must play in order to fit in, to find acceptance, and to be seen as valuable. One of the most significant roles that men are conditioned to take on is that of the provider, the protector, the leader in a relationship. And this role becomes especially ingrained in marriage. It's something that we are taught from a young age, that marriage is the ultimate bond of equality. But is that the reality for men? The concept of equality in marriage often exists more as an ideal than an actual practice. We're told that marriage is about two people coming together to share their lives equally. The narrative that women and men are equal partners in love, work, and emotional investment sounds beautiful in theory. But what happens when you pull back the curtain on this supposedly balanced relationship? The truth is that many men find themselves under constant pressure to meet a set of expectations that go far beyond what they bargained for. They're expected to be emotionally available, to support their spouse's dreams, to provide financially, and to be the one to resolve conflicts. All the while, society still expects men to suppress their own emotions, to avoid showing weakness, and to keep being the rock of the relationship. This creates an imbalance in the marriage, one that's often difficult to see on the surface, but profoundly affects men's well-being. Take a look at how relationships are often framed by society. Men are conditioned to believe that marriage will bring them companionship, stability, and a deep emotional connection. But what happens when the reality falls short of these expectations? What happens when a man gives everything he has, his time, his energy, his resources, only to realize that his needs and desires are being overlooked or undervalued? The very idea of equality becomes a trap, a promise that sounds good in theory, but is rarely realized in practice. This imbalance is especially clear when we start looking at the responsibilities that men bear. In a marriage, men are expected to provide, protect, and serve as the emotional pillar of the relationship. Yet when a problem arises, the weight often falls solely on their shoulders. While women are praised for their nurturing qualities, men are expected to hold everything together, often without being allowed the space to express their own emotions or needs. In many cases, men are not encouraged to ask for help or to even admit when they feel overwhelmed. The financial aspect of marriage provides another stark example of this inequality. Men traditionally are seen as the financial providers. They are expected to bring home the income, manage the bills, and often sacrifice their own ambitions for the sake of providing for their family. Meanwhile, the notion of shared finances is often only a surface-level ideal. Men are expected to carry the full weight of financial responsibility, all while keeping up with the pressures of a demanding career. and maintaining a sense of personal success. On the other hand, women in many marriages are often encouraged to focus on emotional well-being, nurturing the family and supporting their partner's ambitions. But this doesn't mean that women don't face their own set of societal pressures. In fact, women are also expected to fulfill certain roles that include being emotionally available, maintaining the household, and making sure the relationship remains stable. However, these pressures are often portrayed as natural or innate qualities, while the pressure on men to provide and protect is seen as an external force that burdens them. But why does this illusion of equality persist? Despite the deep-rooted roles that men are expected to fill, one of the most powerful reasons is the societal structure that continues to reinforce these traditional gender roles. From a young age, boys are taught that being strong means sacrificing their own needs for the good of others. Men are told that being a man means providing for their families, taking on challenges alone, and being the one who keeps the household running smoothly. They are expected to embody stoic resilience, even when they are silently burning out from the weight of these expectations. This imbalance often goes unnoticed, because it's so ingrained in how we think about relationships. When a man works long hours to support his family, he's not seen as a victim of exploitation. He's seen as a hard-working, responsible partner. When a man stays emotionally stoic, providing strength for his wife and children, he's seen as a rock but who holds the man when he feels like he's about to crumble under the weight of it all. The expectation that men should always be the ones to provide, protect and hold everything together is not only unfair, it's dangerous. It limits men emotionally, financially and personally. Men are expected to give everything of themselves, but when it comes time to receive something in return, the rules are suddenly different. The idea of equality becomes distorted in a way that benefits the expectations society has set for men, but does little to address the emotional needs that men often quietly struggle with. Ultimately, the illusion of equality in marriage masks the deeper truths about the dynamics at play. Men are expected to give in ways that go unnoticed, to carry burdens that are often invisible to others, and to maintain their role as the strong, silent partner. When we talk about the sacred nature of marriage, we must also acknowledge that there's a darker side to it. A side where the promises of mutual respect and equality are not always lived up to. In truth, the equality we often talk about in marriage is more of a myth than a reality. Men are expected to be everything: providers, protectors, emotional anchors, without being allowed the same level of vulnerability or emotional release that women often receive. The very idea of equality is distorted, hidden under layers of unspoken expectations, societal norms, and an overwhelming pressure to perform in ways that few can truly maintain. The financial burden. When most people think of marriage, they often imagine the idea of shared responsibilities. Two people coming together to pool their resources, support each other, and build a life together. But for many men, the reality of marriage comes with an overwhelming financial burden that often falls squarely on their shoulders. The idea that marriage is an equal partnership can feel more like a facade when it becomes clear that men are often the ones expected to carry the heaviest financial load. From the moment a man enters a marriage, he is conditioned to believe that he is the primary provider. Society, family, and even the woman he marries place this expectation on him. Whether it's paying for the wedding, covering household expenses or funding the future of the family. Men are expected to bring home the majority of the income and ensure that the financial foundation of the marriage remains stable. On the surface, this might seem like a noble expectation. After all, providing for a family is a responsibility. But what often goes unspoken is how this pressure can slowly drain a man's energy, time, and emotional well-being. Men are told that being a good husband means financially supporting their wife, but no one ever seems to mention the toll this takes on their mental health, their personal goals, and their happiness. This financial burden doesn't just apply to the day-to-day expenses. It extends to long-term expectations, from paying off debts to funding the children's education. The man is expected to plan for the future in a way that often leaves him feeling trapped. He is expected to sacrifice his own desires, whether they be career ambitions, hobbies, or even personal freedom, to ensure that the family remains financially secure. In some relationships, the financial burden can become even more pronounced. The wife may take on a more passive role in the financial sphere, relying on her husband to make the major financial decisions and provide the majority of the income. This dynamic can feel suffocating for men, as they find themselves working harder and longer hours to maintain the lifestyle their wife and children have become accustomed to. The irony here is that while women are encouraged to focus on emotional connection, self-care, and nurturing the family, men are often expected to give up their own needs to provide for the family financially. What happens when the marriage falls apart? This is where the financial burden on men becomes even more glaring. Divorce, which disproportionately affects men in terms of financial consequences, leaves many men scrambling to rebuild their lives, both emotionally and financially. Men who were once the primary providers may find themselves left with a substantial portion of their income going toward child support, alimony, and division of assets. This is in addition to the emotional pain of losing their family and their home. In many cases, a man will have spent years building up his wealth and security, only to have it stripped away in a divorce settlement. He is left paying for the life he once shared with his wife. Even though the relationship is over, this financial fallout often forces men to sacrifice their own financial security and future, leaving them struggling to maintain their standard of living while providing for their children and ex-wife. But it's not just the aftermath of divorce that presents financial challenges. It's the entire duration of the marriage. Men are often expected to work harder and longer hours to meet the growing financial demands of the family, with little room to focus on their own well-being or personal goals. The pressures of being the sole financial provider can lead to burnout, stress, and resentment. But men are rarely allowed the space to express these struggles without being criticized or seen as weak. This imbalance is further exacerbated by the fact that, in many marriages, women are not expected to contribute financially in the same way. While there is nothing inherently wrong with one partner taking on a more active role in the household, the issue arises when men are expected to bear the majority of the financial responsibility without any acknowledgement of the toll it takes on them. The narrative that men should always be the ones to provide, while women focus on nurturing the family, creates an unspoken inequality that can feel suffocating for men. In modern relationships, some women may choose to work and contribute financially, which can certainly help alleviate the burden on the man. However, even in these cases, the expectation is still often that the man should be the primary breadwinner. The added stress of having to meet these expectations, while still maintaining the household, raising children and managing the day-to-day responsibilities, often leaves men feeling overwhelmed and unappreciated. This constant pressure to provide can lead to a sense of isolation. Men may feel that they are constantly giving, whether it's their time, their energy, or their money, and never receiving anything in return. They may begin to question whether their efforts are truly valued, or if they're simply fulfilling a role that society has dictated. For them, the financial burden of marriage is not just about the money. It's about the emotional weight that comes with it. Men are expected to give everything they have, often at the expense of their own well-being. The idea that marriage is a partnership of equals becomes hollow when it's clear that the man is the one carrying the majority of the load. And when things go wrong, when the marriage ends or falters, it's often the man who pays the price emotionally, financially, and mentally. Ultimately, the financial burden that marriage places on men is one of the most significant, yet least discussed aspects of the institution. The expectation to provide, protect, and sustain the family financially can leave men feeling trapped in a cycle of sacrifice. And when the marriage ends, the fallout can be devastating. The truth is that men often bear the brunt of the financial responsibility, with little to no recognition of the toll it takes on them. And as the burden grows heavier, so does the realization that this unbalanced dynamic is one of the hidden truths about marriage that few are willing to acknowledge. The emotional toll. Marriage is often thought of as a partnership, a union of two people who share their lives, their dreams and their futures. But what is rarely discussed is the emotional toll that marriage takes on men. Men are often expected to be the strong ones, the ones who provide, protect, and keep everything together. But who is there to support them? Who helps shoulder the emotional weight when they feel overwhelmed or empty? In many marriages, men are conditioned to suppress their emotions. Society teaches men from a young age that vulnerability is a weakness, that showing emotions is something to be ashamed of. As a result, when they enter a marriage, they often feel the need to be the steady rock, the one who never falters, never shows fear or sadness. This societal expectation is one of the most dangerous aspects of marriage for men, as it leads to emotional repression, isolation, and ultimately burnout. While women are often encouraged to express their feelings and seek emotional support, men are expected to keep their emotions in check. This can lead to an unhealthy dynamic, where the man feels like he must carry the emotional load of the relationship while neglecting his own needs. Men are expected to be emotionally available for their wives, to listen to their problems, to offer solutions, and to provide comfort. Yet when the man himself is struggling, his needs are often overlooked or dismissed. The emotional burden that men carry in marriage can be incredibly heavy. Men are expected to provide emotional stability, but they are rarely given the space to express their own feelings. The result is a constant internal struggle. On the outside, they are the strong, dependable partner, but inside, they may feel emotionally drained, unappreciated, and alone. Their own emotional needs are often put on the back burner, as they focus on the needs of their spouse and family. This emotional exhaustion can lead to feelings of resentment. Men begin to resent the expectations placed on them, the pressure to be perfect, to never falter, to always have the answers. They begin to feel as though they are giving everything to the marriage, but receiving little in return. When men give their time, energy, and emotional support to their wives, without receiving the same level of support in return, they start to question the fairness of the relationship. The emotional toll can also manifest in physical ways. Chronic stress, anxiety, and depression are all common consequences of carrying the emotional weight of a marriage alone. Men who feel that they cannot express their emotions are at a higher risk for mental health issues because they bottle up their feelings, which can lead to emotional breakdowns later on. The constant pressure to maintain a facade of strength is exhausting, and over time, it can cause deep emotional wounds that are difficult to heal. Another aspect of the emotional toll on men is the fear of failure. Men are often expected to be the ones who solve problems, provide solutions, and take care of their families. When things go wrong in the marriage, whether it's a financial issue, a disagreement, or an emotional conflict, men often internalize the blame. They feel responsible for fixing everything and making sure the family remains intact. This sense of responsibility can be overwhelming, especially when the man feels that no one is there to help him carry the load. Even when men try to express their struggles or ask for help, they are often met with resistance. Society teaches men that asking for help is a sign of weakness. As a result, many men choose to suffer in silence. Rather than admit that they are struggling, this only deepens the emotional toll. As the man feels more isolated and alone, the idea that men should always be the ones to handle things can leave them with nowhere to turn when they need support. The lack of emotional validation in marriage is another source of strain for men. While women are often encouraged to seek emotional validation and support from their partners, men are expected to give that validation to their wives without receiving the same in return. Men often feel that their emotional needs are ignored or minimized. When they try to communicate their feelings, they may be told to man up or get over it. This dismissive attitude towards men's emotions only adds to the emotional strain. The emotional toll is not only about the daily pressures of marriage. It's also about the long-term effects of constantly putting others first. Men are conditioned to put their wives, children, and families above themselves. But what happens when a man's needs are consistently ignored over time? This can lead to feelings of worthlessness, resentment, and a deep sense of dissatisfaction with the relationship. So what is the solution to this emotional toll? The first step is for men to recognize that their emotions matter. They need to acknowledge their own feelings and make sure that their emotional needs are being met. Marriage should be a partnership where both partners support each other emotionally, not just one person carrying the weight of the relationship. Men need to feel that they are allowed to express their feelings without fear of judgment or dismissal. Marriage should not be a place where men are expected to constantly sacrifice their emotional well-being for the sake of others. It should be a space where both partners are able to show vulnerability, to share their struggles, and to support each other through difficult times. Until this balance is achieved, the emotional toll on men will continue to be one of the hidden truths of marriage that few are willing to confront. The truth about marriage is that it isn't always the fairy tale we've been sold. For many men, it's a place of unspoken sacrifice, where they give everything they have, often with little in return. If you've felt the emotional, financial and mental toll of marriage. You're not alone. The hidden costs of this institution are more than most are willing to admit, and it's time we start talking about it. If you've ever experienced the emotional burden of marriage, or if you've had your own struggles with these expectations, I want to hear from you. Share your story in the comments below. Let's start an honest conversation about the hidden truths of marriage that affect men everywhere. And if you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on more real talk about relationships and self-awareness.